I think what the Real News Network is doing is making an essential contribution to the revitalization of a functioning democracy that can really be a government of, by, and for the people, not just in words.
As Barack Obama moves closer to becoming the next president of the United States, foreign policy will increasingly be on his agenda in spite of an increasingly more serious financial crisis. The appointment of Robert Gates as Secretary of Defense has been much discussed. People are talking about what exactly does it mean about Obama's vision of the world, compared especially to what he campaigned on. And to further delve into Gates and that appointment, I'm now joined by Ray McGovern, who was at the CIA for 27 years, was a presidential briefer, and took a leading role in the analysis section of CIA. Thanks for joining us, Ray.
Welcome, Paul.
So you worked with Gates.
I did, yeah.
And you followed his career. I know when I interviewed you last, which was before the election, you were rather hopeful and optimistic about Obama's election. What has Gates done? Has it taken any of the rose off the bloom for you?
Well, you know,
bloom off the rose, I should say.
I don't have any pretenses to be an expert on American politics. You know, my sight was always over abroad, and all I can say is that I think that Obama is really entered on a really curious course here. He's read the Rivals book by Doris Kearns Goodwin, and he thinks that he can bring in a whole bunch of people who were for the war, who were against the withdrawal, who were against a lot of what Obama has propounded as his policies, and succeed. It seems like an unnecessary hurdle that he's creating for himself. I suspect maybe he's looking at what Jimmy Carter did when he came into this town. Jimmy Carter thought he could run this country with a bunch of people from Georgia. And so he sort of dissed the establishment, dissed the Eastern establishment, dissed the media, you know. And he can't do that. He can't do that, okay? So Obama's gone just 180 degrees in the other direction. He's got establishment all over the place. I am somewhat encouraged that he has not yet named a director of national intelligence or a head of the CIA. I think that takes very, very careful thought. And what he has to do very, very much right off the bat is fix that cesspool that has been created the last 8 years.
To start with, let's focus on Gates. So give us a little bit of the background of who Gates is from your point of view, and then his coming into a position as the Secretary of Defense and his relationship to Rumsfeld. And you've written an article recently about this. So tell us about Gates.
Yeah, well, Gates really had to start as an analyst in my branch, the Soviet Foreign Policy branch of the Analysis Directorate at CIA. Very bright, not quite as bright as some of the others, like Mel Goodman and some of the people who were also criticizing him, but bright enough. The problem was he was so transparently ambitious. He was a disruptive force in the branch. And I, first-line supervisor, I thought, well, this is the kind of thing you record in a fitness book. So I wrote it down, I remember. And, when he became head of analysis and then head of the CIA, most people say, well, don't you regret being so candid? I've never regretted it for one day. It was right, and it was right on target.
So well, what exactly was your critique?
Well, his ambition exceeded everything, and it was very difficult to figure out what Bobby Gates believed.
What's an example?
Well, for example, when Casey came in and he saw a Soviet under every rock in Central America, those like Bobby Gates that raised that rock, oh, I see two of them, two Soviets there, or three. Well, two got you a branch, three got you a division, and four got you to be head of analysis, which is, it's overstating it just by a little bit.
So giving your superiors what they want to hear.
Yeah. Now, that's really mischievous when you talk about our main target, what the Soviets called the glavny vrag, the main adversary, because we missed the fall of the Soviet Union, the transcendental moment in history of the 20th century. And we missed it not because there weren't a lot of bright people around that could see it, but that they were suppressed. And it was Bobby Gates.
Missed it meaning that they didn't understand the internal weaknesses and they were exaggerating the strengths.
Yeah, Gorbachev, when he came in, I was briefing in those days, so I could talk about what I saw with respect to Gorbachev. I could tell the vice president how to pronounce his name, garbage and off. Make sure you pronounce the accent the off. That's the way the orthography goes. Okay. Well, anyhow, when you looked at the Soviet specialists that Gates had suppressed and then put unspecialists on top of them, ideological. In the old days, the Soviet Union used to say somebody running a plant you'd have a choice between somebody who's red or somebody who's expert, okay? All the red guys came in, okay? Now, why was that serious? It was serious because we missed the implosion of the Soviet Union. Not only that, but these folks that were promoted into these positions by going along to get along, they were the ones that 21 years later, when George Tenet came back from the White House and said, now we have to write an estimate on weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We've been able to avoid that for a year, but now we have to do it because the Senate won't vote for war unless we do. Just two things, folks. Number one, it's got to come out the same way Dick Cheney came out in his big speech there on 26 August. This is October. No, actually, this is September of 2002, so it's a couple of weeks after Cheney set the terms of reference for this thing. And then the other thing is it's got to be done in 3 weeks because Karl Rove wants it done well ahead of the midterm elections. He's got the Democrats where he wants. Now, instead of, in my day, we would have said, George, you're kidding, of course. I mean, if we heard that and the person was serious, most of us would have walked out of that room. And if we didn't, he would have known that we had an insurrection on our hands because we didn't do that stuff. We didn't do that stuff. Here it is, 21 years after Gates had a chance to politicize the ranks. I mean, that's how you do it. You know, you could put people in who are malleable, who are going to smell the prevailing winds, okay? And so they said, yes, sir, sure, we can do it. Out of that process came the most reprehensible in-error estimate ever produced by the CIA. Weapons of mass destruction all over the place, ties between Iraq and Al-Qaeda, cockamamie stories like Iraq trying to get yellow cake uranium from Niger. I mean, give me a break. They threw the whole thing in there and then encouraged Colin Powell to tell those lies before the UN on the 5th of February.
No, if you look at the corporate media right now, to use your word, the fawning over Gates is pretty exaggerated. Gates came in and saved the day from a failing Rumsfeld. The surge was a glorious success. Obama seems to have recognized that the surge was a wonderful success. So give us your take on the transition of Rumsfeld to Gates and what's the real meaning of all that?
Well, very few people remember that Rumsfeld was going wishy-washy on Iraq. He was finally listening to his generals. In the fall of 2006, General Albizu, General Casey came back, testified before Congress saying, look, whatever you do, please don't give us any more troops. We don't need any more troops. Thanks very much. It'd be nice, but we don't want. Why? Well, because if you give us more troops, these Iraqis will never get their act together. They'll figure they can always diddle us. There'll always be us there, and they will never face up to their responsibility to run their own country.
And these Iraqis means Maleki and the section that had been given government.
Politicians, yeah, okay, and, you know, the factions as well. So not only that, but Khalid Zad, our ambassador out there, Khalid Zad, he said, look, please, the last thing we need is more troops. Not only that, but there was a national intelligence estimate which said more troops are not going to help, okay? Now, the president heard all this, and he has admitted to Bob Woodward that he realized we were losing. This is, fall of 2006. And instead of listening to all those folks I just mentioned, and Baker and Hamilton, who came to the same conclusion with their report at the end of that year, he said, well, this means that I might lose a war on my watch. And Cheney says, yeah, you don't want to do that. So they went to the American Enterprise Institute and said, you got any smart guys that can figure out a way to prevent us from losing this war on my watch? Sure they did. General Keane, other people, Kagan came before. Beautiful little memo. And then the question was, how do you do this with Rumsfeld opposed to this kind of thing?
So by this point, Rumsfeld's actually talking about trying to get out?
Well, Rumsfeld's making it clear within the White House, and that means Cheney, that it's a fool's errand to send more troops in there. We need to pull out. Ironically, if Rumsfeld's recommendations, which were leaked to the Times a month later, if they were heeded, we'd be out of Iraq now. Can you imagine? So why are we still there? Robert Gates to the rescue, the deus ex machina here. Bush says, who do I get to replace Rumsfeld? This is right around the election time, okay? And he meets with Gates 2 days before the election, and he says, hey, how would you like to be Secretary of Defense? And Gates said, well, okay, what do I have to do? Well, you have to go down to Tampa and cashier, well, not cashier, you tell General Abizade to retire early. You go out to Baghdad, tell General Casey that we'll give him a sinecure. He can be, well, Chief of Staff of the Army, no responsibility there. And then we have this really neat general with 6 rows of medals here. His name is Petraeus. And I call him Petraeus ex machina, okay? So Petraeus will come in and fix things behind you, which all you have to do is agree to push for 30,000 more troops, called the surge. We'll sell that to Congress, but don't tell Congress yet.
Now, Gates had been a member of the special study group on
Iraq. The one that came to the conclusion that we need to withdraw, that we're losing.
A recommendation he supported when he was a member of the committee.
I've learned recently they drafted most of that report. So what I'm talking about is a chameleon, okay? He'll sense the prevailing winds, and he'll tune his own analytic conclusions accordingly, okay? So what happened was he went up for his confirmation proceedings. Everyone was fawning over him because it was sort of anyone but Rumsfeld sort of time. And he was asked a couple things. He says, well, one of the congressmen said, now, why did you repeat the story that Al-Qaeda and Iraq had a close connection?
When did he do that?
He did this years before, about 3 years before. And you know what he said? He said, well, I saw that in the press. It was just a press report. And I'm thinking, here's the former head of the CIA speaking out publicly, and he picks this particular press report to speak on. Then they ask him, are there any new ideas on Iraq? He said, there isn't a new... I was there. I want to see my protege there get confirmed. So there isn't a new idea on Iraq in this government. Well, he knew darn well that the new idea was 30,000 more troops to be inserted there. Why? To prevent Cheney and Bush from losing the war, in quotes, before they left. Now, the bad thing about this, Bob, I mean, this is consequential pandering, okay? 1,000 plus U.S. servicemen, men and women, are dead now because of that surge. No useful purpose was served by it. The only thing that happened was a predominantly Sunni city, namely Baghdad, several million people there, became a predominantly Shia city. And how? By ethnic cleansing. How did that happen? U.S. troops protected the Shia. They went in there and cleaned out the Sunni. Now, is that the kind of country we are? Besides that, they bribed the Sunni out there in Anbar, said, we'll give you $300 a month if you stop shooting at us, and they did. And then the smart guy, Mukhtar al-Sadr, said, you know, hey, I'll keep my powder dry. It's just a matter of time before the U.S. leaves, so I'll do ceasefire. How about it? So now you know where we are. We're going to leave. What profit was there in that 1,000 men or women and men sacrifice? None.
And you put this to a large extent on the role of Gates. So in the next segment of our interview, let's dig in further into Gates and his role in the surge, because according to everyone, supposedly, the surge was a great success, including President-elect Obama, who seems to recognize that the surge was a great success. So please join us for the next segment of our interview with Ray McGovern.
There are times when reality just asserts itself, in spite of the haze created by television news and entertainment. Sometimes crisis rips a tear in the fabric of myth and propaganda. Now a profound economic crisis has ripped asunder the American dream itself. Millions of people losing jobs and homes. They lack proper health care and any real sense of security. Since 2001, workers' wages have fallen or remained stagnant, even though worker productivity has risen almost 33%. By 2006, the top 1% of households were receiving 23% of all pre-tax income, more than double what it was in the 1970s. It's the greatest concentration of income since 1928. As unemployment rises, we need to know why this crisis is happening and what we can do to defend ourselves. Why are wages so low? Why is the society so laden with debt? Is it in ordinary Americans' interest to have a $1 trillion military budget to project power across the globe? Corporate television news won't ask these questions, let alone try to find answers. Only a truly independent news network can tackle these questions with courage and with ordinary people's interests in mind. We need a news network that's independent of corporations, governments, and political parties. We need the real news. But there won't be a real news network unless we raise substantial funds right away. The current financial crisis has hit our funding hard. Together, we do have the power to turn it around. There are already hundreds of thousands of people watching the real news every month. If everyone pitches in, we can build an internet and cable television network that will change the face of media forever. You can organize house parties, talk to friends at school and at work, send email blasts and spread the word. Distribute this video to everyone you know. Pick up the phone and call a few friends and suggest they visit therealnews.com. Invest just 10 minutes a day to ask friends and colleagues to join the campaign to create a truly independent source of internet and television news. Together, we can build this network. Just 50,000 people at $10 a month gets us to our first level of sustainability. You can help us reach this goal, and when we do, we'll move to television in millions of homes across North America. Help us reach an audience in the millions. Please contribute generously. Spread the word. Let's make the Real News television network a reality.
Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute at therealnews.com.